The folder slipped from her trembling hands a heartbeat before she did. Paper scattered across the polished marble floor like frightened white birds, financial reports sliding beneath expensive Italian shoes as the entire executive boardroom fell into stunned silence. No one rushed to help her. No one even moved. Instead, someone laughed. Looks like the secretary finally skipped breakfast one time too many. Another voice followed with cruel amusement. No, she never skips breakfast. Soft chuckles echoed around the room. Elena Brooks couldn't hear the rest. A sharp ringing filled her ears as darkness crowded the edges of her vision. She tried to steady herself against the conference table, but her fingers slipped across the glossy surface. The world tilted violently. She had promised herself she would never collapse at work. Not today. Not in front of these people. Especially not after working 36 straight hours preparing the merger documents everyone else had taken credit for. Her knees finally gave out. The last thing she saw before hitting the floor was a pair of handcrafted black leather shoes stopping inches from her face. Silence swallowed the room. A deep, calm voice shattered it. Who laughed? No one answered. The temperature inside the boardroom seemed to drop. The owner of the voice didn't raise it. He didn't need to. Every executive lowered their eyes. Because everyone knew that voice. Damien De Luca. The man newspapers called a billionaire. Governments called him an investor. Enemies whispered another title. The king of the black syndicate. 2 hours earlier, Elena adjusted the sleeves of her modest navy blouse while staring at her reflection in the office restroom mirror. Her clothes were neat, professional, simple. Nothing designer. Nothing flashy. She knew people noticed her size before anything else. The whispered comments. The fake concern. The pity disguised as advice. You'd be so pretty if... Have you tried? She had heard every version. Years ago those words had broken her. Now they simply passed through her like wind against stone. Her worth had never depended on fitting inside someone else's expectations. She tucked a loose strand of chestnut hair behind one ear and smiled gently at herself. You've got work to do. As senior executive secretary, she coordinated impossible schedules, managed confidential records, and solved crises before anyone realized they existed. Her greatest strength wasn't typing. It wasn't organization. It was negotiation. Elena possessed an extraordinary ability to resolve impossible conflicts without anyone realizing she had prevented disasters. Most executives considered secretaries invisible. She intended to keep it that way. Invisible people heard everything. Outside the skyscraper, 3 black armored SUVs rolled through the security gates. Pedestrians stopped walking. Luxury cars pulled aside. Even experienced security guards straightened instinctively. The convoy belonged to only one man. Damien De Luca stepped from the center vehicle wearing a charcoal suit tailored with mathematical precision. No unnecessary movement. No wasted expression. His silver watch alone cost more than several luxury apartments. Behind him, 12 security operatives scanned every rooftop. Inside the lobby, conversations died instantly. He acknowledged no one. Respect was never requested. It arrived before he did. Damien wasn't visiting for business. He was here because someone inside Hawthorne Global had been stealing from him. Millions had disappeared through transactions too sophisticated for ordinary auditors to notice. Someone intelligent was hiding in plain sight. He intended to find them personally. Meanwhile, Elena hurried through corridors balancing coffee, legal files, and 2 ringing phones. Miss Brooks. She turned. The chief financial officer stormed toward her. Where are the revised acquisition contracts? They're already on your desk. They aren't. They're in the blue folder beneath yesterday's quarterly report. He blinked. Right. Without another word, he hurried away. Another problem solved. Another person who would never admit she had rescued him. She smiled anyway. Competence didn't require applause. Minutes later, Elena entered the executive boardroom carrying the final merger documents. She froze. The room was filled with unfamiliar faces. Elite security teams lined the walls. Men wearing discreet earpieces stood motionless like statues. And at the head of the table sat Damien De Luca. His dark eyes lifted from the reports in front of him. One glance. That was all. Yet Elena felt as though every secret she had ever buried had been carefully examined. She placed the documents before the executives without speaking. As she turned to leave, Damien's voice stopped her. You. The single word carried effortless authority. She looked back. Yes, sir? He slid a financial statement across the table. Everyone in this room approved these numbers. His gaze never left hers. Tell me why they're wrong. 20 executives stared at her. Several silently begged her not to answer. Others dared her to fail. Elena studied the report for only a few seconds. Then she calmly looked up. The numbers aren't wrong. A few relieved sighs escaped. She continued. They're hiding something. The room became perfectly still. Her fingertip rested on 3 ordinary-looking expense codes. Someone split one illegal transfer into dozens of legitimate transactions. Individually they appear harmless. Together. She met Damien's unwavering gaze. They reveal someone has been laundering money through this company for months. No one breathed. Damien slowly leaned back. For the first time in years. He smiled. Barely. Almost imperceptibly. Interesting. Then his expression hardened again. Without looking away from Elena, he gave a quiet order. Close the doors. Heavy locks clicked into place around the boardroom. Every executive turned pale. Damien's voice was calm enough to be terrifying. Miss Brooks. He rose to his full height. You're either the most valuable person in this building. He took one measured step toward her. Or the one who orchestrated everything. The room fell into suffocating silence as armed guards shifted into position around her. Damien's unreadable eyes held hers, and with a decision that would alter both of their lives, he spoke the words no one expected. She stays. The boardroom remained locked. No one dared shift in their seat. Elena stood surrounded by armed guards, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Yet outwardly she remained remarkably composed. Panic had never solved a problem. Observation often did. Damien De Luca studied her without speaking. Most people crumbled beneath his silence. She didn't. Finally, he slid another folder across the table. If you're innocent, he said evenly, prove it. Elena opened the folder. It contained 6 months of transaction records, vendor contracts, and encrypted payment summaries. Hundreds of pages. The executives exchanged smug glances. There was no way a secretary could analyze that much information on the spot. Elena quietly removed a pencil from behind her ear. She didn't rush. She didn't perform. She simply worked. Nearly 20 minutes passed before she circled 3 company names. These vendors don't exist. The chief financial officer scoffed. They've been audited. No, Elena replied calmly. They've been copied. She turned one page. The addresses belong to abandoned warehouses. Another page. These signatures are digital overlays. Another. And these invoices were approved exactly 37 seconds apart. No human reviewed them. Silence returned. Damien glanced toward his financial director. The man's face had lost all color. Without raising his voice, Damien spoke. Verify every word. Within minutes, one of his analysts nodded. She's correct. The room seemed to shrink. Damien looked back at Elena. You just uncovered a laundering network my specialists missed. She answered honestly. I wasn't looking for money. What were you looking for? Patterns. For the first time in years, Damien found himself genuinely intrigued. By the following morning, Elena expected to be dismissed. Instead, she was escorted to the highest floor of De Luca Tower. The private office overlooked the entire city, wrapped in floor-to-ceiling glass that reflected the morning sun like liquid gold. Everything about the space spoke of disciplined luxury. Rare artwork. Handcrafted walnut walls. A grand piano that looked untouched. No unnecessary decoration. Every object had purpose. Just like its owner. Damien stood beside the window. I've acquired Hawthorne Global. Elena blinked. So, everyone works for you now? They always did. He turned toward her. You'll remain my executive secretary. She frowned slightly. I already have a job. You have a better one. I haven't accepted. His expression remained unreadable. No. She stared. No. I haven't accepted. A faint smile almost escaped him. You negotiate before agreeing. I negotiate before trusting. For several quiet seconds neither looked away. Then Damien gave the smallest nod. Good. The days that followed settled into an unexpected rhythm. Every morning, Elena arrived before sunrise. Every evening, she left long after everyone else. She reorganized executive schedules that had been chaos for years. She quietly prevented conflicts between legal teams. She remembered birthdays, dietary restrictions, security clearances, and international time zones without needing reminders. She solved problems before they reached Damien's desk. He noticed that she thanked janitors by name. He noticed she always carried extra snacks, not for herself but for exhausted interns. He noticed she stayed behind to help employees whose mistakes might have cost them their jobs. And he noticed something else. She never asked anyone to notice her. Others did notice. Unfortunately, not kindly. At lunch one afternoon, two impeccably dressed executives whispered loudly enough for Elena to hear. "I still don't understand why she's always near Mr. De Luca. Maybe he feels sorry for her." Another woman laughed. "Please. She's a secretary." Elena continued eating without reacting. Damien entered the executive dining room moments later. Every conversation stopped. His eyes moved from the women to Elena. Without saying a word, he carried his own lunch tray across the room. Every executive watched in disbelief as the most feared man in the city sat beside the plus-size secretary everyone underestimated. He unfolded his napkin. "Is anyone sitting here?" Elena smiled softly. "They are now." The room fell into stunned silence. One woman quietly excused herself. Another couldn't even lift her fork. Damien ignored them completely. As they ate, he spoke without looking at her. "You don't defend yourself." "I don't have to." "They insult you. They reveal themselves." His eyes met hers. "You believe that?" "I know it." For the first time in years, someone answered him without fear. And without trying to impress him. He respected that. More than he expected. 3 nights later, Elena stayed late organizing confidential merger files. Rain hammered against the skyscraper windows. Most of the building had emptied. She carried a stack of documents toward the archive room when one folder slipped open. Several photographs scattered across the floor. She knelt to collect them. Then froze. They weren't financial documents. They were surveillance photographs. Damien. His security routes. License plate numbers. Private residences. Even aerial images of De Luca Manor. Someone had been watching him. Hidden beneath the photographs was a handwritten note. Phase 1 complete. The traitor has earned his trust. A cold chill crawled down Elena's spine. Footsteps echoed in the dark hallway behind her. Slow. Measured. Not security. Someone else. She instinctively switched off the archive room light and stepped behind a shelf, clutching the file against her chest. A shadow appeared beneath the doorway. The unknown figure stopped, as if sensing someone was inside. Then a low voice whispered into a phone. "She's found the file." Pause. Then words that turned Elena's blood to ice. "Tell the Raven Syndicate. We move tonight." The footsteps retreated. Elena waited only long enough to be certain the corridor was empty before running toward Damien's private office, unaware that high above the city, through the lens of a sniper's scope, 2 figures were already being watched together. The war had begun. Elena burst through the doors of Damien's private office without knocking. The room's elite security team reacted instantly, drawing their weapons before recognizing her. Damien didn't flinch. He simply looked up from the illuminated city beyond his floor-to-ceiling windows. "You run only when something matters," he observed calmly. She placed the surveillance file on his desk, her breathing uneven. "It matters." Damien opened the folder. Each page he turned darkened the room. Photographs of his convoy. Blueprints of De Luca Manor. Timetables. Security rotations. Every weakness his enemies could exploit had been documented with terrifying precision. Then he reached the handwritten note. Phase 1 complete. The traitor has earned his trust. A silence heavier than fear settled over the office. Damien pressed a discreet button beneath his desk. Within seconds, his chief of security, Luca Moretti, entered with half a dozen armed operatives. "No one leaves this building," Damien ordered. "Lock every floor." Luca nodded. "Already done." Before anyone could speak again, every light in the tower flickered. Then went black. Emergency generators roared to life, bathing the building in dim red security lighting. A deafening explosion shattered the underground parking garage. The entire skyscraper trembled. Alarms screamed. "Attack!" Someone yelled through the radio. Automatic gunfire erupted below. Damien moved before anyone else. He stepped directly in front of Elena, shielding her with his own body as bullets shattered the glass wall overlooking the city. The windows held, they were bullet-resistant, but spiderweb cracks raced across the expensive panels. "Stay behind me," Damien commanded. "I'm not leaving you." Their eyes met for a brief second. He believed her. Outside, black-clad gunmen stormed the lobby while terrified employees fled in every direction. The Raven Syndicate had arrived. Chaos spread through the building. Smoke filled the emergency stairwells. Explosions echoed floor after floor as attackers attempted to force their way toward the executive offices. Damien's security teams answered with disciplined precision. Gunfire thundered through the corridors. Luca reloaded behind a marble pillar. They're hitting us from 3 entrances. They know the building, Damien replied. Too well. A traitor. Someone inside had given away every defensive position. As security teams coordinated over encrypted radios, Elena noticed something no one else did. Messages kept arriving from different floors. Different voices. Different locations. Yet, the background sound never changed. She closed her eyes. Listened again. The same metallic echo. The same ventilation hum. The same dripping water. They're lying. Damien turned instantly. What? The attacks aren't happening everywhere. She grabbed a digital blueprint displayed on the conference screen. Listened to the recordings. One by one, the security officers replayed the transmissions. Realization spread across the room. They're broadcasting pre-recorded gunfire, Elena said. They want us dividing our people. Her gift for recognizing hidden patterns had revealed the deception. The Raven Syndicate wasn't attacking 3 entrances. Only one. The others were distractions. Damien issued new orders immediately. Concentrate every available team in the East Corridor. His soldiers moved. Seconds later, radio chatter exploded. They're retreating. We've trapped them. They never expected reinforcements. The entire assault collapsed. Without Elena's insight, half the building would have been left defenseless. Instead, dozens of lives were saved. Damien looked at her with something entirely new. Not curiosity. Not admiration. Trust. The surviving attackers fled toward the rooftop. A helicopter descended through sheets of rain. Its side door slid open. A masked sniper leaned out. One shot. The bullet tore through the night. Damien saw the flash. Elena. He threw her to the rooftop floor. The round struck the concrete where her head had been an instant earlier. The sniper adjusted for a second shot. Before he could fire, Damien's men opened up with automatic rifles. The helicopter veered sharply, disappearing into the storm. But the danger wasn't over. One wounded assassin lunged from behind an air conditioning unit, grabbing Elena and pressing a knife against her throat. No one moved. Security froze. The assassin backed toward the helicopter pad. We're taking the witness. Elena remained astonishingly calm. She glanced once toward Damien. Not in fear. In understanding. She deliberately shifted her weight, driving her heel backward onto the attacker's injured foot. He cried out. His grip loosened. Damien fired a single shot. The bullet struck the assassin's shoulder, sending the knife clattering across the rooftop. Within seconds, security subdued the attacker. The rooftop fell silent except for the rain. Damien crossed the distance between them in moments. His hands searched her face, her shoulders, her arms. Are you hurt? She managed a small smile. I've had worse Mondays. For the first time, the feared Mafia boss laughed. It was quiet. Brief. Completely genuine. Hours later, the city slept beneath a blanket of rain. Inside De Luca Manor, Elena stood on a private balcony overlooking endless gardens illuminated by golden lights. She had never imagined a place like this existed. Damien joined her carrying a velvet box. I don't wear jewelry, she said softly. I know. He opened the box anyway. Inside wasn't a necklace. It was a beautifully crafted antique fountain pen with her initials engraved in silver. The greatest negotiator I've ever met, he said, should own something worthy of signing history. Elena ran her fingers over the engraving, visibly moved. No one has ever given me something chosen. Just for me. They should have. She looked away before tears could form. For years, people had told her to become smaller, to occupy less space, ask for less, expect less. Damien's voice broke the silence. You don't need to shrink yourself to deserve respect. She slowly met his eyes. They only saw my size. I see the woman who saved my people. His expression softened in a way no one else had ever witnessed. You are brilliant, Elena. A gentle breeze stirred between them. Neither spoke. Neither stepped away. The distance separating them had become almost unbearably small. Then Luca's urgent voice crackled through Damien's earpiece. Boss, we've identified the traitor. Damien's expression turned to stone. But, he's not working alone. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the manor walls, an unseen figure lowered a pair of binoculars, whispering Elena's name with chilling familiarity. 3 days after the attack, the city buzzed with rumors. The failed assault on De Luca Tower had shaken every criminal syndicate, political circle, and corporate empire. No one knew how Damien De Luca had survived an operation planned with military precision. Even fewer understood why a quiet executive secretary had suddenly become the most protected woman in the city. Inside De Luca Manor, however, Elena's morning began much as it always had, with coffee, schedules, and impossible problems. She reviewed security rotations while coordinating an international charity gala Damien had agreed to host. Publicly, it would raise millions for children's hospitals. Privately, it would bring together CEOs, politicians, diplomats, and nearly every major mafia family under one roof. It was the perfect place to expose a traitor. Or to start a war. On the evening of the gala, De Luca Manor looked less like a residence and more like a royal palace. Crystal chandeliers reflected thousands of lights across polished marble floors. An orchestra filled the ballroom with elegant music. Rare artwork lined the walls, while world leaders, billionaires, and underworld kings exchanged carefully measured smiles beneath the watchful eyes of elite security teams. Luxury surrounded every guest. Yet when Elena descended the grand staircase, the room forgot everything else. She wore a midnight blue gown that embraced her curves with effortless elegance instead of hiding them. Tiny silver details shimmered like stars across the fabric. Her chestnut hair fell in soft waves over one shoulder, and the only jewelry she wore was the silver fountain pen Damien had given her, secured inside a jeweled case at her waist. She hadn't changed herself. She had simply stopped apologizing for existing. Conversations faded into silence. Several women who had once mocked her stared in disbelief. One executive whispered, "That can't be the secretary." Another answered quietly, "No, that's the woman standing beside De Luca." As if on cue, Damien crossed the ballroom. Ignoring every important guest waiting for his attention, he stopped beside Elena and calmly offered his arm. "You look extraordinary." She smiled. "I still feel like myself." "Exactly." Without hesitation, he escorted her into the ballroom. Not behind him. Beside him. The message required no announcement. Everyone understood. The most feared man in the city had publicly chosen where his loyalty stood. Across the room, former critics lowered their eyes. None dared speak another cruel word. Later that evening, representatives of the 5 mafia families gathered in De Luca Manor's private council chamber. Unlike the dazzling ballroom, this room carried no luxury beyond necessity. A long oak table. Bulletproof walls. Armed guards at every entrance. Power needed no decoration. One by one, the family leaders questioned Damien's decision to involve Elena. "A civilian shouldn't attend this meeting. She's untrained. She doesn't belong here." Elena remained silent. Then a courier rushed inside carrying encrypted intelligence. "Our overseas shipping routes have disappeared." The room erupted. Millions of dollars worth of shipments had apparently vanished. Arguments exploded across the table. Accusations followed. Damien quietly slid the encrypted report toward Elena. "Your opinion?" Several men laughed openly. "A secretary?" Elena ignored them. She studied the shipping manifests, customs reports, and satellite timestamps. Then she noticed something strangely familiar. The shipment numbers weren't random. They formed a negotiation code used decades earlier in international diplomacy. Someone wasn't stealing the cargo. They were sending a message. She decoded the sequence within minutes. It isn't an attack. Every voice stopped. It's an invitation. She pointed toward one highlighted port. "The Raven Syndicate wants every shipment redirected here. They're gathering all of us into one location." One elderly mafia leader frowned. "A trap. A battlefield." Silence consumed the chamber. Damien slowly nodded. "Cancel every convoy." His commanders obeyed immediately. Hours later, surveillance drones confirmed what Elena had predicted. Explosives had been planted along the original routes. Had the convoys continued, hundreds of men would have died. No one questioned Elena again. As the gala reached its final toast, Damien found her standing alone beneath a glass ceiling overlooking the stars. "You saved another empire tonight. I only solved a puzzle. You save people." His voice softened. "So often you don't even realize it." She looked at him with quiet honesty. "I spent most of my life believing I wasn't enough." He gently took her hand. "You've never needed to become someone else." Their fingers intertwined naturally. No fear. No hesitation. Only growing trust. For one perfect moment, the war outside disappeared. Then every light in the manor exploded into darkness. The first explosion shattered the east wing. The second destroyed the security gate. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Masked soldiers flooded the estate using stolen security codes. Someone inside had betrayed them. Again. Smoke swallowed the ballroom as terrified guests screamed. Damien immediately pulled Elena behind a marble pillar. "Stay with me. I'm not leaving." "I know." His security teams fought desperately through the mansion. But the attackers knew every escape route. Every hidden corridor. Every panic room. The traitor had given away everything. Through the smoke, Luca shouted into his radio. "They've breached the lower tunnels." Another explosion rocked the manor. The floor cracked beneath Elena's feet. Before Damien could reach her, a section of marble collapsed. She fell into darkness. "Elena." His voice echoed through the ruined chamber. He dove toward the opening, but armed enemies intercepted him, forcing him into a relentless gunfight. Far below, bruised but conscious, Elena landed inside an abandoned escape tunnel. She looked up just in time to see iron blast doors slam shut between them. Heavy footsteps surrounded her. Figures emerged from the shadows, their weapons raised. At their center stood a tall man wearing a black raven mask. Slowly he removed it. Elena's heart stopped. She knew his face. Not as an enemy. As someone she had trusted for years. He smiled with heartbreaking familiarity. "I've been waiting for you, Elena." Above ground, Damien dropped to his knees beside the sealed tunnel entrance, blood staining his hands as the realization hit him with crushing force. For the first time since building his empire, he couldn't save the woman who had become the heart of it. Damien had built an empire by never losing control. Tonight, standing before the sealed tunnel beneath De Luca Manor, his hands were stained with blood, not all of it his own, and control no longer mattered. Only Elena did. He rose slowly, his dark eyes colder than anyone had ever seen. "They wanted a war," he said, his voice calm enough to terrify every soldier around him. "Now they have won." Within minutes, armored SUVs thundered through the estate gates. Helicopters circled overhead. Hundreds of De Luca soldiers mobilized across the city while intelligence teams tracked every Raven Syndicate safehouse. The final battle had begun. Deep beneath the abandoned subway tunnels, Elena sat with her wrists bound, facing the man who had revealed himself as the mastermind behind months of betrayal. Victor Hale. For 5 years he had worked as Hawthorne Global's trusted legal advisor, smiling through every board meeting while secretly feeding information to the Raven Syndicate. "You always noticed patterns," Victor said with a bitter smile. "I underestimated you." "You underestimated honesty," Elena replied. He laughed. "Honesty doesn't build empires." "No," she answered quietly. "But betrayal destroys them." Victor's smile vanished. He ordered his men to prepare the explosives hidden throughout the tunnel network. His plan was simple. Lure Damien underground, collapse the tunnels and erase the De Luca Empire forever. But Victor had overlooked one thing. Elena never stopped observing. As the guards argued, she studied the tunnel maps pinned to a concrete wall. The demolition charges weren't arranged to trap Damien. They formed another pattern. A structural sequence. Destroying them all at once would collapse only the western tunnels. The eastern maintenance passage would remain standing. There was still a way out. Above ground, Damien launched a relentless assault. Gunfire echoed through abandoned warehouses. Explosions shook the riverfront. One Raven hideout after another fell as De Luca forces advanced with ruthless precision. Luca Moretti finally intercepted a coded transmission revealing the underground command center. "We found her." Damien didn't wait for reinforcements. He entered the tunnels with only his closest team. Every second mattered. Victor heard the approaching gunfire and smiled. "He's exactly where I wanted him." He pressed the detonator. Nothing happened. His expression changed. Elena calmly held up the detached firing circuit she had removed while pretending to stumble near the control panel. "I negotiate," she said softly. "I also pay attention." Before Victor could react, she slammed the metal control box into his wrist. The detonator flew across the floor. Chaos erupted. Damien's team burst into the chamber as Raven soldiers opened fire. The tunnels exploded with deafening gunfire. Concrete shattered. Smoke filled the air. Damien fought toward Elena, refusing to stop despite bullets tearing through his jacket. Victor grabbed a hidden pistol and aimed directly at Elena. Time seemed to freeze. Damien stepped between them. The gun fired. A single shot echoed through the tunnel. Damien staggered. Elena caught him before he fell. Rage swept through the chamber. Luca's sniper fired once. Victor Hale collapsed, defeated at last. Around them, the remaining Raven soldiers surrendered as their empire crumbled. The war was over. Weeks later, sunlight replaced smoke. Damien recovered from his injury, refusing every suggestion that he slow down, except Elena's. Standing in the gardens of De Luca Manor, he looked at the woman who had saved his life, his people, and his empire more than once. "I spent years protecting my power," he said. "I was protecting the wrong thing." He reached into his pocket. Not for an extravagant diamond. Not for a symbol of wealth. He held out the antique fountain pen he had once given her. "This pen began our story." Then he knelt. "Will you write the rest of it with me?" Tears filled Elena's eyes. "Yes." The wedding took place quietly beneath the same gardens where hope had first replaced fear. There were no political speeches. No displays of power. Only family, loyal friends, and the people whose lives they had changed together. From that day forward, Elena was never introduced as merely the Mafia boss's wife. She became Damien's equal partner, the brilliant negotiator who transformed the De Luca organization into an empire built not only on strength, but on loyalty, justice, and opportunity. Whenever self-doubt returned, Damien would gently take her hand and remind her, "You were never meant to become smaller. You were always meant to stand beside me." Years later, their story became more than a legend whispered through the underworld. It became proof that the strongest empire is not built by fear alone, but by the courage to trust, the wisdom to forgive, and the love that refuses to let another person stand alone. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable Mafia romances. Tell us in the comments, what was your favorite moment? Elena's courage, Damien's devotion, or the final battle that changed everything? Your support inspires the next story.